On this episode of the Radio Shop, we're going to be looking at a Zenith 9S 369 console radio. Now I only have the guts and the speaker because the owner still has the console back at his house. It was a long drive, so he didn't want to bring the whole cabinet, which is fine. Makes it easier to store in my area. But it is a shutter dial mechanism where when you change band switches, different dials show up. Like this is the AM dial. You flip the switch, it closes on to the shortwave, one shortwave or another. It's kind of the Zenith clockwork mechanism. Right now the knob doesn't work because its set screw's missing in the knob. There's how the band switch mechanism works for the shutter dial. See, it has 3 different bands. That band of shortwave, that band of shortwave, and that band of shortwave. And luckily it's not seized up. The owner said the last time this was powered on, this was his parents', and the last time this was powered on was 1960, and it worked then. But we all know how it worked the last time, but he knew not to plug it in. It has had a cord replaced on it, it looks like twice, because looks like it has an old iron cord here, the plug, because it has that cloth covered checkered white thing that went with an iron, hooked onto a plastic cord, which was then on the back is spliced into where the cord went into the chassis here. So this cord has been replaced at least partially twice. So technicians splice back on and try to set it. There is a little bit of rubber coated wire I see going up here to the eye tube, and there's probably a little bit of rubber coated wire on the inside. Don't know that these have a lot of rubber coated wire. We take a look here. Not too much on the inside. Basically there's a couple pieces here, and I believe that is what goes to the eye tube. The standard capacitors we need to replace. That one looks like, and it was replaced before. It is a replacement electrolytic capacitor because the one that was originally here is totally missing out of the set. But the replacement is down here. And the rest of them are Zenith, and there's been a couple of replacements of the Zenith capacitors. So doesn't look like it's going to be all that bad of a job, just so long as everything in it otherwise is still good. The dial belt is probably worn out. Well, it looks like it's still intact. It does not want to turn. Yeah, the dial belt is all slipping. The mechanism needs to be worked on so we can fix that dial belt. So we're going to dive into it. So we have replaced all of the wax paper caps in this Zenith, and I've also replaced the electrolytics. There were two twin things, twin cap cans. One was still in place, and one had been replaced with one cap. So I had to figure out where the missing cap went. And it went right here. And then this is part of the second cap. I'm going to tie it down so it doesn't flap everywhere. And before we do power up, we have an issue. A long time ago, the owner's son played with the set. And these wonderful pot metal shafts up here to change the band switch tend to crack. And this one, if you can see it, has cracked all the way around. Cracked in half, broken. So we're going to have to yank this off. Make a fix for it. And put it back in. Maybe tough to do. I think what was wrong is, and this is probably this band switch is probably seized up from not being used for so long, and when somebody tried to turn it, it cracked. Because when we first looked at the set, we remember that the actuator actually actuated the shutter dial. Well, the shutter dial mechanism is on the front half of the shaft. That's its lever there, and the shaft that turns the band switch is back here, and I bet it is seized. I'm going to unhook the linkage after I take the dial apart, and we'll find out. But that's where we are right here on this Zenith. And when we come back, we'll continue on. So I have taken the dial off the Zenith, and this is what we have is the broken band selector switch, which is pot metal. See, it broke off pretty darn good there. And it is not really repairable. You can't just solder it back together or anything like that. You can also see it has cracked down here. It's cracked off there, so the crack is a little bit wider. So I'm going to have to devise a way to make a new one of these. Either get one off a junk chassis or devise a way to repair this one. I'm going to try the repair first and see what we can come up with. And after that, I'll just put this on backwards just for a second to check something here. And then after that, we'll move on. I don't know if somebody had attempted to repair this before because it was really stiff trying to turn it back and forth in here. And I swear there's the blob of solder that's holding it into the thing. And then this is really loose in here. It tells me that there's a bushing missing up in here. And the bushing may have fell out when it was broke off by the owner trying to turn it. This was so stiff. You can see there's been something leaked down through here out of this, like oil or something. I have kind of lubed this up just to make it move better. I figured the band switch was hung, but it wasn't. The band switch clicks just fine. It was this right here that was so stiff it wouldn't move. So we're going to try to devise a way to fix this and go from there. The original shaft that controlled the shutters and the band switch had cracked off because it's made of pot metal, and it's right here, and the other half was on the shaft. It was cracked as well, and it was stuck, and it was swelled, and it didn't want to turn, so it had completely crumbled. The other side just broke up into a bazillion little bitty pieces. That was the only way I could get it out. But I recreated a new one, printing it on my 3D printer. I took the dimensions before it completely fell off. Have to finish hooking it in, but I've hooked it up to the lever. It does turn the switches, and we'll find out if it does run the shutter. I may have to do a little bit more tweaking on it, but I do have to get it, put the C-clip back on here, and I will have to put the washer back on, then the lever that goes on there, but it fits pretty good. On there, so hopefully it will last much longer than the original did. And we'll see. But that is a 3D printed Zenith shaft and lever for the band switch. So this tuning system uses a flywheel and a pulley down here, and then there's a pulley up here that runs the tuning capacitor. So there's a belt that goes between here and this shaft inside. So I'm going to use this square rubber material to make a new belt, slip it over the components, glue it in so that I have a belt that will drive the tuning capacitor. So while my belt is drying, I'm going to work on replacing the old nasty power cord with a new one. So up under here it just hooks to a couple of terminals that go, one goes to the switch and one goes to the power transformer primary. So we're going to work on fixing that.
Someone who nobody wants anything to deal with. Mickelson has lost sponsors. He has lost some sponsorships. Some sponsorships have put on hold. A relationship with the American Express, the tournament out in the Palm Springs, has ended their connections with Phil Mickelson. All on the heels of the excerpt of the book from Alan Shipnuck, who's a member of the Fire Fit Collective, who's doing a book on Phil Mickelson. Alan released the conversation, part of his conversation with Phil Mickelson about the Saudi Golf League, and a conversation that they had in November, and Alan
Estoy seguro de que se entiende que las negociaciones no son fáciles ni agradables, pero
to the new Flying Doctor base at Charleville in Western Queensland in 1963.
That's just that.
And 107.7 megahertz for 160 watts each, and also a privately operated FM relay station on 88 megahertz. As we said earlier, one of the major purposes for establishing the two government PMG stations, VJD at Wave Hill and VJJ at Camel Wheel, was to
associates. The same thing with the Al-Qaeda leader in Yemen. And I agree with America First principles, make America great again principles.
So that's about covers it on the Zenith 9S 369. I don't have the cabinet, so you're not going to get to see it in the cabinet. The cabinet is with the owner. The owner will come pick the chassis and the speaker up and go put it back in the cabinet. So the cabinet did not come along, but that is the 9S 369 with the newly printed shaft to run the shutter dial. And that's about it here on the Radio Shop. Thanks for joining us. Subscribe, like, view some other videos. We'll see you next time.